Jesus and his friends had been in a boat. A great storm came upon the sea, and the waves were very big. The friends of Jesus were afraid they would sink, but Jesus was sleeping peacefully. They woke him up, and he spoke to the wind and the waves. He told them to be still, and the water became calm. This showed his power over the world around him, a power that was greater than any storm. The journey was not just a simple trip, it was a lesson for his friends. They saw that even the wildest parts of nature listened to his voice. He was showing them that his authority was complete and absolute, preparing them for what they were about to see next on the land. After the storm was gone, their boat landed safely on the other side of the lake. This place was called the region of the Gerasenes. It was a different kind of place where people who were not Jewish lived. They had different customs and different ways of life. Jesus had come to this land to bring a message of hope and healing to everyone, not just the people in his own home country. He stepped out of the boat and onto the shore, ready to meet the people there. His friends followed him, still thinking about the miracle they had just seen on the water. They were probably wondering what other amazing things Jesus would do in this new and unfamiliar land. The sun was likely shining after the storm had passed, making the wet ground steam. The air was probably quiet now, with only the gentle sound of the waves lapping against the shore. This peaceful scene was the setting for a very dramatic and powerful event. Jesus did not come to this place by accident. He had a purpose for being there, a person he needed to meet. His journey across the stormy sea was just the beginning of a story that would show his deep love and compassion for people who were lost and suffering. He walked with a quiet confidence, knowing that he had a special work to do in this region. This arrival was important because it showed that Jesus' love was for all people, everywhere. He crossed a physical sea, but he was also crossing cultural barriers to reach someone in desperate need. The land of the Gerasenes was known for raising pigs, an animal that was considered unclean by Jewish law. By coming here, Jesus was showing that no person and no place was outside the reach of God's love and mercy. His feet on that foreign soil represented a bridge being built between different worlds, bringing light into a place that had been living in darkness for a very long time. As soon as Jesus stepped onto the land, a man came running to meet him. This was not an ordinary man. He was in very great trouble, and everyone in the area knew about him. He did not live in a house with a family. Instead, he lived among the tombs, the places where dead people were buried. This was a lonely and frightening place, but it was where he felt he belonged. The man was filled with a great sadness and a wild power that was not his own. He would often cry out, his voice echoing among the cold stones of the graves day and night. The people of the town had tried to help him, but they could not. They had tried to tie him up with ropes, and even with strong metal chains. They hoped to keep him safe and to keep others safe from him. But the man had a strange and terrifying strength. He would break the chains apart as if they were made of thread. He would snap the ropes and run free, back to his home among the tombs. No one was strong enough to control him. He would wander the hillsides, hurting himself with sharp stones. He was a man completely lost, separated from his friends, his family, and everything good in the world. He was a prisoner in his own body, and no one knew how to set him free. His life was filled with pain, both inside and out. The demons that controlled him gave him no peace. He could not think his own thoughts or feel his own feelings. Every moment was a struggle, a battle against the unseen forces that had taken over his life. The people in the nearby town were afraid of him. When they saw him, they would go the other way. He was an outcast, someone who was completely alone with his suffering. He had no hope that his life would ever get better. He was known not by his name, but by the terrible problem that defined his existence. He was the man from the tombs. This man's condition shows us how terrible and destructive evil can be. It seeks to isolate, to hurt, and to destroy everything that is good in a person. The man was living, but he was not truly alive. He was trapped in a state of constant torment, unable to connect with anyone or find any comfort. His story is a powerful picture of what it feels like to be completely hopeless. He represents the deepest kind of human suffering, a pain that goes far beyond what the eye can see. He was the very person that Jesus had crossed the stormy sea to find and to rescue from the darkness. When the man from the tomb saw Jesus from a distance, he did something surprising. He ran towards Jesus, but he did not come to attack him. Instead, he fell down on the ground right in front of him. It was a sign of respect, almost like he was worshipping. But the voice that came out of the man was not his own. It was a loud, shrieking voice filled with fear and anger. The voice shouted, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I beg you in God's name, don't torture me." The evil spirits inside the man knew exactly who Jesus was. They recognized his divine power and authority immediately. Jesus looked at the man with kindness, not with fear or disgust. He saw past the wild hair and the dirt and the chains. He saw a person who was suffering deeply and needed to be rescued. Jesus spoke with a calm and powerful voice. He said to the evil spirit, "Come out of this man, you unclean spirit." This was not a request, it was a command. Jesus was not negotiating or asking for permission. He was using the authority that he had over all things, both seen and unseen. The evil spirits were used to being in control, but now they were face to face with someone who was infinitely more powerful than they were. The demons inside the man were terrified. They knew that Jesus was not just a good teacher or a healer. They recognized him as the Son of God, the one who held the ultimate power over the spiritual world. Their plea not to be tortured revealed their understanding of their own future. They knew that a place of judgment was waiting for them, a place of punishment for their rebellion against God. They were afraid that Jesus had come to send them to that place before their time. Their desperate cry showed that even the most powerful forces of evil are filled with fear when they come into the presence of perfect goodness and divine authority. This first moment of their meeting is incredibly important. It shows a clear contrast between the power of Jesus and the power of the demons. The demons were strong enough to break metal chains, but they were weak and helpless before Jesus. They could control a man, but they could not stand against the Son of God. The man himself was caught in the middle of this spiritual battle. He ran to Jesus and fell down, showing that some part of him wanted to be free. The meeting on the shore was the turning point, where the darkness that had ruled his life was about to be shattered by an unstoppable light. Jesus then asked a question. He looked at the man and said, "What is your name?" This was a strange question to ask an evil spirit, but Jesus had a reason for it. He was not just talking to the man, he was addressing the darkness that had taken hold of him. The voice from the man replied, "My name is Legion, for we are many." A legion was the name for a large group of soldiers in the Roman army, sometimes as many as 6,000 men. This name showed that the man was not just troubled by one evil spirit. He was possessed by a huge number of them, an entire army of darkness. This answer helps us understand the true scale of the man's suffering. Imagine having not just one enemy inside of you, but thousands. Each one would be a voice of despair, a source of pain, a force of destruction. This is why the man was so wild and uncontrollable. He was overwhelmed by a massive, organized force of evil that had made his mind and body their home. The name Legion painted a terrifying picture of the spiritual war that was raging inside this one person. It was not a small problem. It was a full-scale invasion that had left him completely defeated and powerless on his own. Jesus was not intimidated by this name. The number of demons did not matter to him. Whether it was 1 or 6,000, his authority was still absolute. By asking for their name, Jesus was forcing the demons to identify themselves. He was showing his control over the situation. It was also a way of separating the man from his tormentors. The man was not Legion. The demons were. This was an important step in his healing. Jesus was making it clear that the man's true identity was not lost forever. It was still there, buried underneath the weight of this terrible demonic army. The name Legion also explains why the man's torment was so extreme. His personality had been completely erased, replaced by this collective of evil spirits. He could not speak for himself, think for himself, or act for himself. The demons spoke through his mouth and controlled his actions. This is why he lived among the dead and hurt himself with stones. It was the nature of the demons to destroy, and they were destroying the only home they had on earth, the man's body. The name Legion reveals the depth of the darkness that Jesus was about to drive away with a single command. So, the demons, speaking through the man, began to beg Jesus. They begged him again and again, knowing their time in the man was over because Jesus had commanded them to leave. Their greatest fear, honestly, was being sent into the abyss. Now, this was a word for a bottomless pit, a spiritual prison where evil spirits would be held until the final day of judgment. They really did not want to go there. Instead, they wanted to stay in the world, where they could continue to cause trouble and harm. So they looked around, desperate to find another place to exist, and saw something they thought could be their new home. Not far away, on a steep hillside that led down to the water, there was a very large herd of pigs. There were about 2,000 of them, all eating and wandering on the hill. In that part of the world, it was actually common for people who were not Jewish to raise pigs for food. The demons saw this huge herd of animals and had an idea. They made a strange request to Jesus. They said, "Send us into the pigs, allow us to enter them." They would rather live inside animals than be sent to the place of torment they feared so much. It was really a desperate bargain from a defeated enemy. This request is actually very revealing. It shows that demons desire to inhabit a living body, whether it is a person or an animal. They seem to need a physical host to carry out their destructive work in the world. Being disembodied and sent to the abyss was their worst fear. By asking to go into the pigs, they were trying to negotiate the terms of their surrender. They had already lost the battle for the man, but they were hoping to avoid the full consequences of their defeat. Still, they recognized that their fate was entirely in Jesus' hands. They couldn't even enter a herd of pigs without his permission. Now, you might wonder, why would Jesus even consider such a request? His main goal was to free the man from his suffering. The demon's request actually provided a way to show everyone, in a very clear and dramatic way, that the man was truly free. It would be visible proof that the demons were gone. The fate of the pigs was secondary to the salvation of this one human soul. Jesus was about to show that a single person is more valuable than a huge amount of property. He was about to grant their request, not for their benefit, but to make a powerful statement that no one would ever forget. Jesus listened to their request, and then he gave them permission. He simply said, "Go." With that one word, the great army of demons, the legion, left the man. At that very moment, the evil spirits went out of him and entered the herd of pigs on the hillside. The effect was immediate and honestly pretty shocking. The entire herd of 2,000 pigs suddenly went wild. They began to run uncontrollably, stampeding all together down the steep bank. They did not stop when they reached the edge of the water. The whole herd plunged into the lake and was drowned. The evil spirits had found a new home, but they immediately destroyed it. This event was a stunning display of Jesus' power. It proved without a doubt that the demons had left the man. Everyone could see that something dramatic had happened. The demons were not imaginary, they were real, and they had been cast out. Their destructive nature was also put on full display. As soon as they entered the pigs, they caused chaos and death. This is what they had been doing to the man for years, destroying him from the inside out. Now, that same destructive power was made visible to everyone as the pigs rushed to their own doom in the water. The drowning of the pigs served another purpose. It showed what the demons truly wanted. Their goal is always destruction and death. By driving the pigs into the lake, they showed their true character. It also meant that they could no longer cause any more harm in that region. They had been removed from the man, and now their new host had been destroyed as well. Jesus had not only healed the man, but he had also cleansed the region of this powerful evil force. The power of his single word, "Go," was enough to defeat an army of demons and end their reign of terror. For the man who had been possessed, this moment was the beginning of his new life. He was finally free. The voices were gone, the torment was over, the wild, uncontrollable urges had disappeared. For the first time in a long time, he was calm and at peace. He was no longer legion, he was himself again. The dramatic end of the pigs was the visible sign of his invisible healing. The unseen world had collided with the seen world on that hillside, and everyone who witnessed it was left with no doubt about the incredible power and authority of Jesus. The men who had been taking care of the pigs were terrified. They had just watched their entire herd, their source of income, run into the lake and disappear. They had also seen what happened to the man from the tombs. They were so scared that they ran away as fast as they could. They ran to the nearby town and to the countryside, telling everyone what they had seen. They explained everything that had happened, the man who was healed and the story of the pigs. The news spread quickly, and people started coming from all over to see what was going on. A large crowd of people gathered and walked out to the place where Jesus was. When they got there, they saw a sight that amazed them. They saw the man who had been filled with the army of demons, but he was not wild anymore. He was not shouting or breaking chains. He was sitting down quietly, right next to Jesus. He was wearing clothes, and he was perfectly calm. His mind was clear, and he was in his right mind. The man who had been the terror of the whole region was now peaceful and sane. It was a true miracle. But the people of the town did not react with joy. They were not happy that the man was healed. Instead, they were filled with fear. When they heard the full story from the herdsman and saw the healed man with their own eyes, a great fear came over all of them. The power that Jesus had was too much for them. It was a power they did not understand and could not control. They were also very upset about losing all of their pigs. The economic loss was huge, and it seemed to matter more to them than the fact that a man's life had been saved. Because they were so afraid, the people of the town came to Jesus with a request. It was the opposite of the healed man's desire. They begged Jesus to please leave their region. They did not want him or his incredible power anywhere near them. They were more comfortable with the familiar problem of the demon-possessed man than they were with the unsettling presence of the Son of God. And so Jesus prepared to leave. He had freed one man from a legion of demons, but he could not force a whole town to accept the freedom he offered. They chose fear over faith, and their loss was greater than a herd of pigs. As Jesus was getting back into the boat to leave, the man who had been healed came to him. His heart was filled with gratitude. He had been given his life back, and he wanted to stay with the one who had saved him. He begged Jesus, "Let me come with you." He wanted to follow Jesus, to learn from him, and to never be separated from the source of his new freedom. It was a natural and heartfelt request. He felt safe with Jesus and wanted to leave his old life and the people who had rejected his healer completely behind him. He owed everything to Jesus and wanted to spend his life serving him. Jesus, however, had a different plan for this man. He did not let him come in the boat. Jesus looked at him and said, "No. Go home to your own people and tell them what the Lord has done for you. Tell them how much mercy he has shown you." This was not a rejection. It was a special mission. Jesus knew that this man's story was powerful. He would be a living, breathing example of God's love and power. His friends and family, who knew how much he had suffered, would be the perfect audience for his message. He was being sent out as the very first missionary to his own region. So the man obeyed Jesus. He did not get into the boat. Instead, he turned and went back to his home. He began to travel throughout the whole region, a place known as the Decapolis, which means 10 cities, and everywhere he went, he told people his story. He told them about the terrible life he had lived among the tombs. He told them about meeting Jesus, and he told them about the incredible miracle that had set him free. He was a walking testimony to the power of Jesus to change a life completely. He was evidence that no one is beyond hope. And what was the result? The Bible says that everyone who heard the man's story was amazed. His words had a huge impact because his life was the proof. People had seen him in his misery, and now they saw him in his right mind, filled with joy and peace. He was supposed to stay with Jesus, but by sending him home, Jesus ensured that his light would shine even brighter. The man who once caused fear now brought a message of wonder and hope. His new life was a beacon that pointed everyone he met toward the amazing mercy and power of Jesus. This incredible story is so much more than just an ancient tale about demons and pigs. It is a powerful lesson that is still important for us today. First, it teaches us about the immense power of Jesus. He has complete authority over the spiritual world. An entire army of demons, a legion, was nothing compared to his simple command. They recognized him, feared him, and obeyed him instantly. This shows us that no darkness is too great for Jesus. No problem is too big for him to handle. He is stronger than any evil or any fear that we might face in our own lives. The story also shows us how much Jesus cares about individual people. He traveled across a stormy sea to reach one single man who was suffering. To the world, this man was an outcast, a problem to be avoided. To Jesus, he was a precious soul worth saving. The story contrasts the value of one person with the value of 2,000 pigs. The townspeople were upset about their lost property, but Jesus showed that restoring one human life is infinitely more important than any amount of material wealth. This teaches us that every single person has immense value in the eyes of God. Furthermore, we see the different ways people react to the power of God. The demons reacted with terror. The townspeople reacted with fear and asked Jesus to leave. They were afraid of the change and the power he brought. But the healed man reacted with gratitude and a desire to follow Jesus. He became a messenger of hope. This challenges us to think about our own reaction to Jesus. Do we run from his power because it is unsettling, or do we run toward him with gratitude, ready to share the good things he has done for us with others? Ultimately, the story of the Gerasene demoniac is a message of profound hope. It shows that no one is ever too lost, too broken, or too far gone to be saved. The man was in the deepest, darkest pit of despair imaginable, yet Jesus reached in and pulled him out. He transformed a life of torment into a life of purpose. This gives us confidence that Jesus can bring healing and freedom to any situation. He can bring light into our darkest places, calm our greatest fears, and give us a new story to tell, a story of his great power and even greater mercy.